Hi, welcome back. I wanted to talk a little bit today about this idea of a fixed elbow position, because a few people I know have misunderstood the idiom. There's an idiom that says, keep the fixed elbow position. And what they ended up interpreting that to mean is that the elbow never moves. And then if the elbow never moves and somebody presses on this, then they hold it, they hold it, and they hold it, and it's got to hold because the elbow is not allowed to move. And then they'll collapse this up, and this gets choke you because it gets jammed up because the elbow's not allowed to move. And that's not exactly the interpretation as I understand it. It's a fixed elbow position. There's a couple of different meanings to it. One is that the elbow position doesn't move. So when we step in and maybe, Monte, I'll borrow Monte for a second. Here. And we're playing the chi sao, but again, the chi sao, it could be any exercise, any one of our exercises. Let's come this way just a little bit. And when I step this in, I get this into position. This is in the right position. And then I sink my weight, and the elbow holds this position. And sinking my weight does the work. Or maybe I have this, and I've done this, you do your quan sao, and then the elbow is there, and instead of swinging my hand across this way and moving my elbow, the fixed elbow position means I have to move the elbow using my body, as opposed to swinging my elbow back and forth. Thanks. As opposed to swinging my elbow back and forth, swinging my hands this way, or keeping the elbow fixed and just moving my wrist around those. All those are not proper interpretations. So we can say this elbow position is fixed. And if I want it to move, I have to move it I have to move my body. But there's another interpretation as well. And that is to say, if someone presses on this, the elbow is allowed to move. Let's take, for example, lop or ton. How can I have lop or ton if my elbow is not allowed to move? Good one. So the answer is we've got pak and ton and lop, all of which involve an elbow-driven motion. So a fixed elbow position doesn't necessarily mean the elbow can't move. It just means when the elbow moves, it has to move along these paths. The position of the elbow is fixed to these rails. It goes up and down center. The fixed elbow position means the elbow has to go like it was taught in Siulam Tao and Chum Kyu. The elbow cannot go up and down and back and over. It can't go anywhere. The elbow position is fixed into a set of different pathways, like a train, like a railway train rails, train rails. The train can't just floppy go anywhere. The train is fixed to following the rail, and that's what Siulam Tao and Chum Kyu teaches us. What's the rail that our elbow is fixed to? So this is kind of the other interpretation of Wing Chun, of this idiom of having fixed elbow position. So I hope that kind of opens the box a little bit, and it allows your elbow, it allows a bit of flexibility in your Wing Chun, allows you more adaptability into Fan Sao, but not so much that your elbow is uncontrolled. So I hope that gives a bit of an idea that you can use to kind of explore elbow movement and the fixed elbow position idiom in your Wing Chun. I'm going to answer that. I'm going to answer that here. So, people are going to ask, well, what about the third form? And the third form follows the same method as the other forms, as the rest of the system. So we've got Selam, Tau, and Chum Q, and it says, okay, here are the rails that your elbow should follow. And then we get this thing called an emergency situation, where we have rails for the elbow to follow to get out of trouble. And in some cases, the rail is the same. Same rail. And in some cases, the rail is different. But there are still rails. That's to say, when we apply this, or when we're practicing this or training this technique, we can't all of a sudden get our elbow doing some other funny stuff. We have rails to follow that guide us into the most efficient, or guide us in how to escape from an emergency, how to get our elbow back onto the right rail and off of the emergency rail, like a breakdown lane for a truck going downhill, a breakdown and the brakes fail. They have an emergency lane that you can, when the brakes fail, you don't all of a sudden go willy-nilly and drive off into the other lane oncoming traffic. When the brakes fail, there's a breakdown lane. That's where you go. Trains have the same type of thing. So we still have this method, this understanding still applies throughout the system, regardless of whether we're in an emergency situation or not. The thing is, we want to try and use the non-emergency lanes as much as possible. Right? We're not all of a sudden going willy-nilly because we're...
The fixed guideline or guide rail that the third form, even in that emergency, has a...
That's what it's teaching you. You don't all of a sudden, because you're in an emergency, you abandon all your things and you start doing this.
They still thread it.
Yes.
Even with the context of in an emergency, there's still a pull-through thread of the previous.
That's right. These are the same. It's the same path. You know, the path that we have here. Oh, you don't know. You got to put your hand back on center. It's kind of the same method. You know, how do I get back onto the rail? Oh.
The premise is sticking to the most efficient.
Yes. You know, you're out of position. What rail do I follow to get back into position? This is out here. I don't suddenly take it around the back and around. I don't dip it, and there's a rail. Yeah. It's a breakdown lane.
It's like I'm in this bad position. What's the most efficient rail back on track?
That's right. That's right. How do I get back on? And I actually said exactly that. Yeah. How do I get back on track? Yeah. But it's a series of rails. It's not, it winds you back on. If you have like a 90-degree rail, the train will flip. So you got to have a path to get back on track. That's all I wanted to say about the fixed elbow position for this lesson. Once again, I thank you all for watching. I look forward to seeing you again. Until then, bye for now.